My greatest fear is to make a really shitty, embarrassing, pompous film on an important subject, and I am doing it. I confront it. I acknowledge, I will tell you right straight from the most sincere depths of my heart, the film will not be good.
That was Francis Ford Coppola in 1978 talking about Apocalypse Now, arguably the greatest war movie ever made. And of course, he was wrong. Apocalypse Now was phenomenal. But that quote is perfectly applicable to his new and likely final epic, Megalopolis. This movie sucked. Now, I hear you say, Sauce, this is Francis Ford Coppola we're talking about. Francis Ford the Coppola we're talking about here, huh? This is the same guy who directed The Godfather and Apocalypse Now. This legendary director has spent half his life and $120 million trying to get this movie made. Look at the cast. Adam Driver, Lawrence Fishburne, Natalie Emmanuel, Gustavo Frick, Giancarlo Esposito, and John Voight. You really gonna criticize this movie, Sauce? Look, I hear you. I'm just an engineer with a YouTube channel, and I've only got some 500 subscribers. I've got no place to bash the maker of The Godfather. But here's the thing. This movie sucked. It doesn't know what it wants to focus on. It introduces multiple concepts that could be the basis for a really compelling story, but refuses to bear down on any of them. The story jumps from one plotline that isn't at all fleshed out to another plotline that isn't at all fleshed out more times than my ex-girlfriend would when she was telling a story, I think.
She gave me a bunch of crap about me not listening to her enough or something. I don't know, I wasn't really paying attention.
And by all available evidence, it was a disaster zone of a production from beginning to end, as you might expect in a movie that ended up taking 40 years to make. They had to pause shooting B-roll in New York in 2001 due to 9/11. Coppola didn't even know how he would package the movie for a long time. According to one crew member, it was like watching a train wreck unfold day after day, week after week, and knowing that everybody there had tried their hardest to help the train wreck be avoided. They wasted tons of time because the crew would show up for big scenes and Coppola had no plan and would just be chilling in his trailer smoking weed.
Stay off the weed!
In other words, it was a frustrating go of it. And what came of all of it? Well, let's talk about the story. It's supposedly a telling of the Cataline, if you're Italian, or if you're an American, Cataline conspiracy, which occurred just before Julius Caesar was assassinated and the transition of Rome from republic to empire began, but in a modern-day, Romified New York, New Rome. However, it actually has almost nothing to do with that story. Here's what the Cataline conspiracy actually was. A little over a half-century before the birth of Christ, a dude named Cataline hatched a plan to assassinate a handful of Roman officials to the end of eliminating everybody's debt, while perhaps giving rise to his own political career. Cicero, a politician and famed orator who beat Cataline in an election, discovered the plot and tried to expose it, but nobody believed him. Eventually, there was an attempt against his life, and another senator bro named Crassus, who had worked with Cataline during his election, got a letter warning him to leave the city because of a plot a-brewing. Other senators got similar letters, and Cicero successfully blamed Cataline. But Line bounced in the middle of the night with 300 of his supporters. Pretty soon, he and his top co-conspirators were captured and sentenced to execution without a trial. 20 years later, Cicero made an enemy of the Chad that banged Cleopatra and ended up getting beheaded. Pretty cool story. By the way, I got all that info from worldhistory.org. I'm not the president of a major university, so I'm actually somewhat bound by honor to not straight up plagiarize. Now, what happened in this movie? Well, here, Cataline wants to build a utopian city out of a magical material called Megalon. Cicero is the mayor of New Rome and doesn't want Catalina to build his city. His daughter, Julia, falls in love with Catalina and vice versa, which really bums Cicero out. That's the main plot of the film, except the film is hardly about Catalina building his utopia. There are some other plot lines that get much more screen time devoted to them than the building of this magical city. Crassus in this movie is Catalina's uncle and a wealthy banker. Then he marries this young, power-thirsty news reporter who explicitly wants to be part of a power couple. She then rips him off and tries to cut off funding to Catalina because she originally wanted to marry Catalina. Then there's Claudio Pulcher, Catalina's cousin, who begins his own populist political movement that ends up backfiring on him. The film teases a riot coming at the end, even explicitly, but then, nope, It actually ends with Caesar, Catalina, successfully unveiling his utopian city, and Cicero finally on board with the concept, as well as with Caesar banging his daughter. In this movie about the main character building his utopia, there's almost no time dedicated to the main character building his utopia after the first 10 minutes. That's just a backdrop for everything else. Which would make you think maybe the real aim of this movie is not in its plot, but in a deeper message. And rack my brain as I have, I can't pin down for the life of me what it's supposed to be. No deeper theme is earned here. The beginning of the movie sees a couple instances for what Coppola might have been going for. Adam Driver's character quotes Hamlet at length, and I guess the story does kind of mimic Hamlet. So you could say it's going for the same themes as Shakespeare's play: corruption, deception, revenge, madness, family. Except Coppola's work gets so distracted by modernized Roman Empire aesthetic and tripping balls scenes that it doesn't actually focus in on almost anything out of Caesar and Julia's relationship. The movie also starts with a really promising quote voiced by Lawrence Fishburne about the fall of the Roman Empire. And with the Roman aesthetic in a postmodern New York, the movie starts out as if it could be an allegory for the United States' imminent collapse. Now that would be a really interesting story, taking the fall of the Roman Empire and retelling it from modern-day America. As anyone who studies history knows, empires typically fail in very similar ways, and this movie could have been Coppola's warning to the United States to recognize the symptoms of collapse that have crept in and taken a hold of her. But instead, it goes the way it does. The film a couple times brings up another concept that could have served as a better theme to be a roadmap for the movie. Adam Driver's character, Caesar Catalina, can pause time. He can freeze time and look around. Now, I know you're probably wondering how on earth I didn't bring that up before now. That seems like an incredible ability which would have a radical impact on the story, except that it's almost completely irrelevant to the plot. The possible theme it connects to would be interesting to explore. That certain people, artists, architects, writers, have the ability to freeze time. In their work, they take a slice of the present and preserve it for the future. That's what you're doing when you look at Renaissance paintings or ancient Greek architecture or listening to a Frank Sinatra song. You're looking at or listening to a piece of time that has been frozen in canvas, in stone, or in song. And that's a superpower pretty unique to different kinds of great artists. And for a while, Caesar loses that ability to freeze time. Julia reawakens it. Only when Caesar stops building for vanity or even for his future city, and instead dedicates his efforts on behalf of love and his future, can he truly finish building his utopian city and regain that power. That's a pretty good theme, huh? Too bad I spent more time developing it than Megalopolis did. Okay, what about utopia, right? That's a low-hanging fruit. Any half-decent writer can develop the theme that more resources or a better city can't fix the world's problems. Except that, apparently, Francis Ford Coppola thinks that it can. I mean, the movie basically ends with the ribbon-cutting ceremony for Megalopolis, and everything is cheery and golden, and Caesar freezes time for everyone, including him and Julia, except for their baby. Now, setting aside the mechanics of everybody being screwed because the baby doesn't know how to control time and she's the only one that can unfreeze everyone, the message seems to be that we need to create a better society for our children, our future. But according to the movie, the way to do that is to build a city out of magical gold? Everyone was ready to riot 10 seconds ago. And all manners of drug abuse, debauchery, murder, corruption, and betrayal have been occurring throughout the movie's runtime. That's all human nature. That doesn't go away with people having more resources. Evidenced by the fact that it's the most wealthy and powerful people in the movie who are engaging in all of that. That's a childish viewpoint. Actually, it's a Marxist viewpoint. And that's made very clear by the communist perversion of the Pledge of Allegiance that the film ends with. So yeah, I'm just an engineer with a little YouTube channel, but that doesn't exempt Francis Coppola's movies from sucking. He's a legend. But so is Tom Brady, and just because he won 7 Super Bowls doesn't change the fact that in his game with Tampa when he threw 3 picks and lost by 35 to the Saints, he sucked. Francis Ford Coppola is a legend. I don't know if his brain has turned to mush, I mean he's older than Joe Biden, or if he's confirmation that you shouldn't be smoking weed in your 80s, or if he just was never able to get a Roman story out of his head, or what. All I know is his final masterpiece absolutely sucked.
All right, the sauce.
What?
The sauce. I don't know. You're using too much sauce. Okay? Review's over.